Northern California, late 1960s. America was changing. The Vietnam War dominated the headlines. The civil rights movement reshaped the nation. The summer of love had drawn thousands to San Francisco. But beneath the optimism, a different story was beginning to unfold. One that would terrorize an entire region and leave behind one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in criminal history. He called himself the Zodiac. No one knows his real name. No one has ever been convicted. And more than 50 years later, the case remains officially unsolved. Unlike many serial killers, the Zodiac didn't simply commit murders. He wanted to be known. He contacted newspapers. He mocked investigators. He sent coded messages. And he demanded publicity. His crimes became front-page news across California. Every new letter, every new cipher, and every new threat deepened the fear. This documentary follows the established historical record. Where facts are confirmed through police investigations, they will be presented as fact. Where historians or investigators disagree, those points will be clearly identified as theories, not conclusions. The story begins on the evening of December 20th, 1968, a quiet road near Berryessa, California. 18-year-old David Faraday and 16-year-old Betty Lou Jensen parked their car near Lake Herman Road. The area was popular with young couples. It was peaceful, dark, and isolated. Shortly before 11:15 that night, their evening came to a violent end when officers arrived. They found both teenagers had been shot. David died near the car. Betty Lou was found a short distance away. Investigators searched the scene. There were shell casings, tire marks, and witness statements, but no obvious suspect. At the time, police treated it as a tragic double homicide. There was nothing to suggest it would become part of something much larger. Just over 6 months later, on the 4th of July, 1969, history repeated itself. This time, at Blue Rock Springs Park, also near Vallejo. 22-year-old Darlene Ferrin and 20-year-old Michael Mageau were sitting inside a parked car. Another vehicle pulled in nearby. At first, its driver appeared to leave. Moments later, the vehicle returned. A man stepped out, approached the passenger side, and opened fire. Darlene Ferrin was killed. Michael Mageau survived. Despite suffering multiple gunshot wounds, his survival would prove crucial. He became the first person to provide investigators with a description of the attacker. It wasn't detailed enough to identify him, but it confirmed one important fact. The killer had walked directly to the vehicle, said almost nothing, and carried out the attack with chilling confidence. Less than an hour later, the Vallejo Police Department received a phone call. The caller calmly reported the shooting. Then, he made another shocking claim. He said he was also responsible for the murders on Lake Herman Road. 6 months earlier, the call ended. Investigators immediately realized the two cases might be connected, but they still had no name, no suspect, and no clear motive. Then, on August 1st, 1969, 3 major newspapers in Northern California received nearly identical letters. 3 major newspapers in Northern California received nearly identical letters. Each contained details about the murders, details that had never been released publicly. The letters also included 1/3 of a strange coded message. The writer demanded that each newspaper print its portion of the cipher on the front page. If they refused, he threatened to continue killing. Within days, the newspapers published the messages. Hundreds of readers attempted to solve the code. Most failed. Then, a California schoolteacher, Donald Hardin, and his wife Betty, successfully deciphered much of the cipher. The message began with a chilling statement. It claimed that the writer enjoyed killing people because it was, in his words, more fun than killing wild game. The decoded message ended without revealing his identity. Instead, the writer promised that his name was hidden elsewhere. It never appeared. Just 1 week later, another letter arrived. This time, the author introduced himself with a name that would become infamous around the world. This is the Zodiac speaking. From that moment forward, California wasn't searching for an unknown gunman. It was searching for the Zodiac Killer. And the murders were far from over. The Zodiac had a name. He had the attention of the media. And now, he appeared determined to keep it. On September 27, 1969, the killer struck again. This time, at Lake Berryessa. Unlike his previous attacks, this one happened in broad daylight. College students Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were relaxing near the lake when they noticed a man approaching. At first, he appeared awkward, nervous. He claimed to be an escaped prisoner. He said he only wanted their money and their car, but something didn't feel right. The man wore an unusual black hood. It completely covered his head. Over his chest was a white circle with a crossed symbol inside, the same symbol that had appeared in the Zodiac's letters. It would become his signature. He ordered Brian and Cecilia to tie each other's hands. After checking the bindings himself, he suddenly attacked them. The assault was swift. Then, without another word, he walked calmly back toward his car. Before leaving, he used a black marker to write on Brian Hartnell's vehicle door. He listed the dates of the previous attacks, then added the current one. And beneath them, he drew the same crossed circle symbol. For investigators, it was unmistakable. The Zodiac had claimed another attack. Brian Hartnell survived. Despite serious injuries, he was able to describe the attacker. He estimated the man was white, heavyset, with a deliberate, controlled manner of speaking. Cecilia Shepard was transported to hospital. She fought for her life. But 2 days later, she died from her injuries. The Zodiac had claimed another victim, and once again, he had vanished without a trace. Less than 3 weeks later, the killer struck for what is believed to be the final confirmed time, October 11th, 1969, San Francisco. Cab driver Paul Stine picked up a passenger in the city's downtown area. The destination appeared routine. Nothing suggested this fare would be different from any other. When the taxi reached the Presidio Heights neighborhood, the passenger shot Paul Stine at close range. Then, instead of fleeing immediately, the killer calmly removed a section of the victim's shirt. He wiped parts of the taxi, stepped onto the street, and walked away. Several witnesses watched the man leave the scene. Teenagers looking from a nearby house immediately called police. They described the suspect as a white male, adult, stocky, wearing glasses. Police officers quickly flooded the area, but a critical communication error occurred. An early police broadcast incorrectly described the suspect as a black male. As a result, officers searching nearby were looking for the wrong person. Years later, some investigators believed the Zodiac may have passed within yards of responding officers, without being stopped. Whether that actually happened can never be confirmed, but it remains one of the most discussed moments in the investigation. A few days later, another letter arrived at the San Francisco Chronicle. Inside was a blood-stained piece of Paul Stine's shirt. It proved beyond doubt that the writer was connected to the murder. The letter mocked police, claimed responsibility, and suggested he had escaped because officers were looking for the wrong man. The Zodiac seemed to enjoy one thing above all else, not just killing, but humiliating investigators. Over the months that followed, more letters continued to arrive. Some included additional ciphers. Others contained threats. One even claimed the Zodiac intended to attack a school bus. Police increased patrols around schools. Parents became frightened. Children changed their daily routines. Whether every threat was genuine or simply an attempt to spread fear remains unknown. But one thing was certain. The Zodiac had succeeded in creating panic far beyond his confirmed crimes. Investigators now faced an unprecedented challenge: They weren't simply hunting a murderer. They were hunting someone who seemed to enjoy turning the investigation itself into part of the crime. And despite hundreds of detectives, thousands of leads, and years of investigation, the man's identity remained a mystery. As the investigation expanded, police departments across Northern California pooled their resources. The Vallejo Police Department, the Napa County Sheriff's Office, the San Francisco Police Department, the California Department of Justice, and eventually, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Thousands of tips poured in. Hundreds of suspects were interviewed. Fingerprints were collected. Handwriting was analyzed. Every new letter was examined in painstaking detail. Yet despite one of the largest investigations of its time, the Zodiac remained unidentified. One suspect, however, would dominate public discussion for decades. His name was Arthur Leigh Allen. Allen lived in Northern California. He owned a Zodiac brand wristwatch featuring a symbol remarkably similar to the killer's crossed circle emblem. Several acquaintances later claimed he had made disturbing comments about hunting people. Some alleged he had even used the name Zodiac before it appeared in the letters. To many investigators, Allen seemed like a compelling suspect. But there was a problem. The physical evidence never conclusively linked him to the crimes. His fingerprints did not match those recovered by investigators. Handwriting experts reached conflicting conclusions. And later, DNA testing did not provide definitive support for the theory. Arthur Leigh Allen died in 1992, without ever being charged. To this day, law enforcement has never officially identified him as the Zodiac Killer. Over the years, many other names emerged. Lawrence Kane, Richard Gaykowski, Ross Sullivan, Earl Van Best Jr., and dozens more. Books were written. Television documentaries aired. Private investigators developed their own theories. Some believed the Zodiac acted alone. Others argued there may have been more than one killer. But despite decades of speculation, no suspect has ever been proven responsible beyond reasonable doubt. Perhaps the Zodiac's greatest weapon wasn't the gun or the knife. It was uncertainty. Every letter created new fear. Every cipher inspired new theories. Some of the coded messages have been solved. Others remained unsolved for decades. One cipher, known as the 340 cipher, resisted every attempt at decryption for more than 50 years. Finally, in 2020, an international team of civilian codebreakers successfully decoded it. Surprisingly, it contained no hidden identity, no confession, no explanation for the murders. Instead, it largely repeated the Zodiac's earlier claims and mocked those trying to catch him. Even after half a century, the solution brought very few answers. Today, the Zodiac Killer case remains officially unsolved. The FBI no longer actively investigates it, but local law enforcement agencies continue to review new information when credible evidence emerges. Advances in forensic science, particularly investigative genetic genealogy, have solved numerous cold cases once thought impossible. Some investigators hope that the Zodiac case could one day be solved the same way. Others believe too much evidence has been lost, contaminated, or destroyed over time. No one knows whether the truth still exists, waiting in an overlooked file, or whether it disappeared forever. It's easy to become fascinated by the mystery. The ciphers, the letters, the unanswered questions. But behind every headline were real people. David Faraday, Betty Lou Jensen, Darlene Ferrin, Cecilia Shepard, Paul Stine, and Michael Mageau, who survived to tell investigators what he remembered. Their lives became part of one of history's most famous criminal investigations. They deserve to be remembered for more than the mystery surrounding their attacker. More than 50 years have passed. The Zodiac Killer remains unknown. His real name, his true motive, and even the full number of his victims are still matters of debate. Perhaps one day, new forensic evidence, or a forgotten piece of history, will finally reveal the truth. Until then, the Zodiac Killer remains one of the world's most enduring unsolved mysteries. A case that reminds us that sometimes, even decades of investigation, you are not enough to answer history's darkest questions. Do you believe the Zodiac Killer has already been identified, or do you think his name has never appeared on any suspect list? Share your thoughts below. And if you enjoy documentaries exploring history's greatest mysteries, consider subscribing, because sometimes the most compelling stories are the ones that still refuse to be solved.